Female psychology. Once men understand this about women, they can never lose. You have been lied to. We all have. Society fed you a narrative built to keep you compliant and exhausted. You were told to provide, to protect, to compromise. You did all these things, pouring your soul into a woman you loved only to watch her slip away. You did everything right. She still left. Why the game is rigged. Not by women, but by your profound misunderstanding of female nature. Men chase a beautiful illusion. They believe money muscles or becoming the ultimate nice guy will win her loyalty. They think obedience equals love. It does not. It breeds contempt. When you sacrifice your boundaries to please her, you're not showing love, you're showing weakness. And biology is unforgiving to male weakness. Women do not want a lapdog. They do not want a servant. They want a mountain. Imagine a storm rolling off the ocean. A woman's emotional landscape is often like that tempest, fluid, chaotic, and completely unpredictable. When the storm hits, she does not want you to become the wind. She does not want you to panic match her chaos or control the weather. She wants to crash against you. She wants to unleash her anxiety only to realize you are completely unmoved. You are the rock. You are the anchor. This is the great secret of female psychology. Once understood, it makes it impossible to lose. She is testing your frame. When she creates drama, she is not mad about the dishes or a text message. She is looking for your core. She wants to see if you will shatter. If you argue back, you lose. If you apologize excessively, you lose. If her emotions dictate your reality, the relationship is over. She will look at you, and that primal biological switch turns off. She cannot respect what she can break. She cannot love what she cannot respect. But when you stand still, when you look at her with calm, unwavering eyes, when you let her storm rage without losing your masculine center, everything changes. You do not flinch. You do not react. Instead of a fragile leaf blown by her emotional wind, you remain the deeply rooted tree. In that profound silence, her deepest respect is born. Once you become the mountain, you never chase the wind again. Men speak in facts. Women speak in feelings. This is the invisible chasm where 99% of relationships go to die. You are standing on one side of a vast canyon shouting logical arguments across the void. She is standing on the other side, completely deaf to your words, listening only to the frequency of your emotional state. You use words. She uses energy. When a man encounters a problem, he steps immediately into his logical mind, breaking down the situation into manageable pieces and seeking the most direct path to a tangible solution. He wants to fix it. He wants to make sense of it. He wants a rational explanation. But a woman does not process the world through a sterile spreadsheet of right and wrong. She processes reality through a complex, ever-shifting web of emotional subtext. She is not listening to what you are saying. She is aggressively analyzing how you are saying it. She feels your tension. She smells your fear. She detects the microscopic hesitation in your voice when you try to appease her. Have you ever noticed that the most intense arguments happen when absolutely nothing is actually wrong? You are having a perfectly peaceful evening. The bills are paid. The house is quiet. And then out of nowhere, she picks a fight over something completely insignificant. A misplaced towel, a harmless joke, a look she claims you gave her. You feel blindsided. You feel exhausted. You ask yourself why must she ruin the peace? Because peace to the feminine biological imperative can sometimes feel like a terrifying void. And when she feels that void, she must instinctively test the structural integrity of the man she is with. She creates the chaos, not because she hates you, not because she wants to leave you. She creates the chaos because she needs to feel the edges of your container. Imagine a river flowing violently down a mountain. The river is her feminine energy. It is wild, life-giving, and incredibly powerful, but a river without riverbanks is just a destructive flood. It washes away everything in its path, ultimately leaving nothing but devastation. You are the riverbanks. Your masculine frame is the solid, unmoving earth that guides her chaotic waters. When she acts out, when she complains, when she pushes your most sensitive buttons, she is subconsciously throwing herself against the riverbanks to see if they will hold. She is sending a biological sonar ping into the absolute depths of your psyche. Will he crumble? Will he apologize? Will he get angry and lose his temper, proving that I have the power to control his emotional state? If you react, the riverbanks collapse. The floodwaters spill over. She feels an overwhelming sense of biological disappointment. She realizes with terrifying clarity that she is emotionally stronger than you, and a woman cannot find true rest in the arms of a man she can overpower. But what if you simply observe the chaos without absorbing it? You hold the line. You do not raise your voice. You do not rush to frantically defend yourself against illogical accusations. You simply look at her with an amused, deeply grounded presence, fully aware that her emotional turbulence has absolutely nothing to do with your core value as a man. The riverbanks hold firm. The water finally settles. When she realizes that her chaos cannot penetrate your quiet strength, her deep-seated anxiety melts away. The biological test is complete. She feels undeniably safe, and only then, in the profound security of your unyielding frame, can she fully and beautifully surrender. Welcome to the battlefield. It is completely invisible. It happens every single day. In the dating community, they often call it a shit test. But that specific terminology is incredibly reductive, often painting women as malicious adversaries who are consciously plotting your psychological downfall. She is not plotting. She is surviving. To truly understand the underlying mechanics of the test, you must travel back through millions of years of brutal human evolution, returning to a dark time when choosing the wrong weak mate meant absolute certain death for a woman and her vulnerable offspring. Her brain is hardwired for safety. She needs a protector. But how does she actually know if you possess the strength to protect her from a deeply dangerous world if you cannot even protect your own emotional state from her? The test rarely announces itself. It comes perfectly disguised as a seemingly innocent question, or a sudden insult, or an unreasonable demand made at the absolute worst possible time. Are you really going to wear that ridiculous shirt? My ex-boyfriend used to take me to much nicer restaurants than this one. If you actually loved me, you would cancel your plans with your friends and stay home. Most men hear these provocative words and immediately fall right into the trap, frantically scrambling to explain themselves, profusely apologize, or fiercely defend their suddenly bruised egos. You get defensive, you get angry, you try to logic her out of her emotional state. And the precise moment you do any of those reactive things, you have already definitively failed the test. Because the test was never actually about the shirt, the restaurant, or your weekend plans with your friends. It was a subconscious probe, a highly calibrated psychological instrument designed specifically to measure the structural density of your masculine core. She throws an emotional punch directly at your jaw, simply to see if you possess the unwavering fortitude to take the hit without completely falling apart. She wants you to pass. She desperately needs you to pass. When you react with explosive anger or nervous justification, you clearly signal that she controls you. You hand over your power. You become weak. A man who is easily provoked by the fleeting words of a woman is a man who can be easily manipulated by the chaotic world. And her deepest biological instincts will instantly register him as a profound evolutionary liability. If a simple sarcastic comment from her can completely derail your emotional stability and ruin your entire evening, how are you ever going to handle a real crisis when the world actually falls apart? How can she trust you? She cannot. She will pull away. The burning attraction will rapidly evaporate, replaced by a lingering, uncomfortable sense of maternal pity, because you have tragically transformed from her grounded, unshakable rock into an anxious child throwing a desperate temper tantrum. So how do you actually win this invisible war? You do nothing. You remain entirely still. You look at her with quiet eyes that convey a deep, immovable ocean of self-respect, a silent confidence that completely refuses to be dragged down into the petty, chaotic mud of unnecessary conflict. Instead of nervously catching the emotional grenade she just threw directly at you, you simply let it drop harmlessly to the floor and watch it explode entirely unaffected by the loud noise and the blinding smoke. You agree and amplify. You smile slightly. You ignore the absurdity. Yes, I am wearing this shirt, and I think it makes me look absolutely spectacular. And by refusing to defend yourself, you subtly and powerfully communicate that her fleeting opinion, while perhaps valued, does not dictate your own intrinsic self-worth. You are not deeply dependent on her constant validation to survive the reality of your day. You are whole. You're unbreakable. When she finally sees that she cannot successfully manipulate your internal emotional state, the biological test immediately concludes. The chaotic nervous energy dissipates completely into thin air. She looks at you, and instead of seeing a fragile ego that needs constant exhausting coddling, she sees a sovereign king who rules his own internal empire with absolute tranquility. You win by not playing. Imagine a fierce game of tug-of-war. You're on one side, she is on the other. Between you is a thick, heavy rope of emotional attachment, rigid expectation, and exhausting control. When she feels insecure, she pulls the rope. When you feel disrespected, you violently pull it back. The tension builds, the friction burns your hands. We are deeply conditioned to believe that holding on tighter will somehow prevent the people we love from walking away, as if our anxiety alone could forge an unbreakable chain of eternal loyalty. It cannot. It pushes away. The harder you pull, the more desperately she resists until the relationship becomes nothing more than an exhausting daily battle for dominance and constant emotional reassurance. You must stop pulling. You drop the rope, you step back. The precise moment you completely release your desperate grip on the need to be right or the need to aggressively manage her perception of you, the agonizing tension instantly vanishes into thin air. She falls backward. The war ends. This is the profound paradox of surrender. The ancient Stoic philosophers understood a timeless, unshakable truth about the human condition. The more desperately you try to control external circumstances, the more deeply you become a miserable slave to them. She is an external circumstance. You cannot force her to be loyal, you cannot force her to be happy, and you cannot force her to respect you through sheer willpower or endless logical debates about your undeniable value. You surrender the illusion of control. This surrender is not a cowardly act of giving up on the relationship, but rather a magnificent display of extreme internal confidence that permanently shifts the entire dynamic of power between you. When you drop the rope, there is no longer a massive wall of masculine resistance for her to push against. In that sudden, shocking vacuum of conflict, she is forced to confront her own emotional turbulence without using you as a highly convenient scapegoat for her internal chaos. You let go. You breathe in. The only reason you hold on to the rope so tightly in the first place is because you are secretly terrified that if you let go, she will simply walk away and never come back. Fear makes you weak. Fear makes you cling. A woman possesses an incredibly powerful biological intuition for male desperation, and the exact moment she detects that you are operating from a profound fear of losing her, her primal respect for your masculine frame will instantly evaporate. You must embrace loss. You must stand alone. The ultimate freedom of a truly grounded man comes from the quiet, unshakable realization that his life will remain entirely spectacular, whether she chooses to stay or whether she decides to leave. Your life is full. Your path is clear. When you deeply internalize this powerful Stoic principle, you naturally stop suffocating her with your anxious, needy attachment. You finally give her the vast, open, and incredibly attractive space she desperately needs to freely choose you on her own terms, completely unburdened by your heavy expectations. Instead of frantic apologies and desperate attempts to fix a problem that only exists in her temporary emotional state, you offer her nothing but your calm, unwavering presence. You do not chase. You simply observe. You're no longer a hostage, you're a free man. When she realizes that her sudden mood swings and her silent treatments have absolutely no power to destroy your internal peace, she experiences a profound psychological reset. She looks at your empty hands. She sees that you have dropped the rope not out of weakness or apathy, but out of a magnificent, intimidating strength that requires absolutely nothing from her to exist. You are completely self-sourced. The paradox of surrender dictates that the less you try to aggressively cage a woman's chaotic spirit, the more intensely she will desire to remain safely anchored by the quiet gravity of your unbothered soul. And in the presence of a truly self-sourced man, a woman feels an overwhelming, undeniable urge to finally lay down her own weapons and peacefully surrender to his reality. You must rebuild yourself. You must start now. The foundation is cracked. For years, you have been desperately constructing your entire identity on the incredibly unstable ground of a woman's unpredictable emotional validation, sacrificing your own profound needs simply to maintain a fragile, temporary illusion of peace. You thought you were building a magnificent, impenetrable castle of love, but you were actually building a fragile, pathetic house of cards that collapses the very second a slight breeze of female disapproval blows through the room. You are the nice guy. You hate the conflict. You want her happy. But the brutal, unforgiving truth about the perpetual nice guy is that his extreme kindness is rarely genuine functioning. instead as a deeply manipulative, covert emotional contract designed entirely to silently extract love and sex through relentless, exhausting appeasement. You are secretly keeping score into a game she does not even realize she is playing. You buy the expensive dinners, you patiently listen to her complain for hours on end, and you constantly compromise your own masculine boundaries, silently expecting her eternal loyalty as an inevitable reward for your massive, unrequested sacrifice. She feels the hidden contract, she resents the silent debt, she loses her primal respect. A woman possesses a highly tuned, millions of years old biological radar that immediately detects when a man is being agreeable simply because he is secretly terrified of her potential anger or her sudden devastating withdrawal from his life. She absolutely does not want a man who effortlessly bends his own reality to fit seamlessly into hers, because a man who easily abandons his own deeply held principles for a woman will just as easily abandon her when the real world becomes dangerously difficult. You must kill the nice guy. You must become completely real, to build an unshakable, unbreakable foundation that absolutely no external emotional force can ever successfully fracture. You must permanently shift your center of gravity away from her fleeting opinions and firmly anchor it deep into your own uncompromising personal standards. Your ultimate value as a sovereign masculine entity does not mysteriously increase when she showers you with praise, and it absolutely does not decrease when she brutally criticizes you during a chaotic, highly emotionally charged argument. You are the final judge. You set the absolute baseline. When you finally realize that you are the sole undisputed architect of your own internal reality, you instantly stop acting like a frantic, desperately reactive participant in her theatrical, ever-changing emotional drama. You no longer feel the burning, agonizing need to aggressively defend your actions profusely, apologize for breathing, or logically win a completely irrational argument that was designed specifically by her subconscious to aggressively drain your precious masculine energy. You quietly step off the stage. You simply watch the play. If she begins to disrespect you, you do not yell, you do not throw a pathetic temper tantrum, and you certainly do not attempt to logically convince her why she is treating you incredibly unfairly. You simply remove your attention, which is the absolute most valuable and scarce currency a highly grounded man can ever offer a woman, and you calmly redirect that intense laser-like focus back onto your own magnificent life purpose. You turn around and walk away. You flawlessly maintain your profound peace. Silence is your most devastating weapon, not used as a petty manipulative punishment to make her feel bad, but deployed as a profound, impenetrable psychological shield that fiercely protects your own internal tranquility from her entirely unnecessary fabricated chaos. By refusing to participate in the highly toxic dynamic of endless draining bickering, you clearly establish a massive, undeniable, and entirely unspoken boundary that silently communicates exactly what you will and will not tolerate in your immediate presence. She furiously tests the heavy boundary. The unmoving boundary holds completely firm. The power dynamic fundamentally and permanently changes. When you stop frantically trying to nervously manage her rapidly shifting emotions and instead dedicate your entire massive life force to mastering your own internal stoic state, you become incredibly dangerous to the modern weak illusion of the highly disposable compliant man. You naturally transform into a deeply grounded, entirely self-reliant mountain of man who effortlessly commands absolute unwavering respect without ever having to raise his voice or aggressively demand pathetic compliance from the woman he chooses to love. You are the ultimate prize. You are the final destination. Building this magnificent, unshakable foundation requires immense agonizing and relentless discipline, systematically stripping away years of heavy toxic societal conditioning to finally reveal the quiet, dominant, and beautifully stoic nature that has always been buried deep inside your ancient genetic code. And once that magnificent psychological foundation is properly and permanently laid in solid, unbreakable stone, you will never again be violently swept away by the sudden, unpredictable, and entirely temporary storms of human-female emotion. You will always remain standing. You will always remain entirely free. The game is finally over. You have stopped playing. You let the illusion die. For the first time in your entire life, you are no longer desperately terrified of saying the wrong thing, making the wrong move, or losing a woman who was never truly yours to begin with. You cannot lose her. You can only lose yourself. Once you deeply internalize this magnificent, unshakable truth about female psychology and human nature, The heavy burden of constant performance anxiety completely vanishes from your broad shoulders. You breathe deeply. You walk slowly. When you truly understand that a woman's biological imperative is to fiercely test the absolute limits of your emotional stability, you naturally stop taking her temporary chaotic outbursts as a deeply personal attack on your fundamental character. The ultimate freedom is not found in mastering the art of manipulation or memorizing perfectly crafted lines to carefully control her ever-shifting emotional state. Freedom is absolute detachment. Freedom is total peace. When you finally become the deeply rooted mountain, you naturally realize that every single storm that crashes against your solid rock is just a temporary passing weather pattern that leaves you completely unharmed and perfectly whole. If she stays, it is beautiful. If she leaves, it is fine. Because your profound value, your magnificent purpose, and your unwavering stoic center remain entirely intact, proudly radiating a quiet dominant strength that the chaotic modern world desperately needs but rarely ever sees. You are the quiet king. You rule your own mind. This is the end of your suffering, the death of the anxious boy you once were, and the quiet, powerful birth of the grounded, unbreakable man you were always destined to safely become. The storm will always come. The wind will always blow. But from this exact moment forward, you will never again be violently uprooted by the chaotic, unpredictable emotional weather of anyone else on this earth. I want you to think. Look deep inside yourself. Tell me about the exact moment in your own life when you finally decided to drop the heavy rope, completely walk away from the exhausting emotional drama, and peacefully reclaim your own magnificent masculine center. Leave your quiet story below. I will read every single one. Until next time, stay grounded.